My mentally ill sister tearfully told our father I destroyed her new iPhone during Christmas because I was jealous of her. He yelled at me for a full hour and then kicked me out into the cold night without letting me say a word. I stayed silent. But this morning, I calmly sent him the security footage, her stomping the phone into pieces, then texting someone, "Watch this, I'm going to manipulate him into giving me Pro Max." I'm Luna Wilson, 28, and I work as a marine biologist at our local aquarium. I've always been the responsible one in the family, the one who moved out early, got a stable career, pays my own bills, and generally tries to stay out of family drama. My sister Amelia is 25 and has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. I want to be clear that I'm not stigmatizing mental illness. I've always tried to be supportive and understanding. But Amelia has a long history of using her conditions to manipulate situations when things don't go her way. Our father, Benjamin Wilson, is a 58-year-old mechanical engineer who's always been a bit of a pushover when it comes to Amelia. Our mother passed away when I was 22 and Amelia was 19, and I think Dad's guilt about not being able to fix Amelia's mental health issues has made him extremely susceptible to her manipulation tactics. He enables her constantly, giving her money, buying her things, and always taking her side in any conflict. Now, here's where it gets interesting. About 6 months ago, I installed a security camera system at Dad's house. He'd been having issues with package theft, and since I'm pretty handy with technology, I offered to set it up for him. The system has cameras covering the front door, back door, living room, and kitchen, basically all the common areas. Dad knew about all of them, and so did Amelia. The cameras store footage locally and also back up to a cloud service that I manage, since Dad isn't great with technology. Christmas this year was at Dad's house, just the three of us. I'd driven over from my apartment about 20 minutes away, bringing homemade cookies and some nice gifts I'd carefully picked out. Dad had gotten both Amelia and me new iPhones, the regular iPhone 15 models, nothing fancy, but still a thoughtful and expensive gift. I was genuinely grateful because my old phone was starting to act up. Amelia seemed happy with her gift initially. We had a nice dinner, opened presents, and everything was going well. I should mention that Amelia still lives with Dad. She's never been able to hold down a job for more than a few months, and Dad covers all her expenses. She gets disability payments, but they're not enough to live independently, and Dad has never pushed her to try harder or seek more comprehensive treatment. Around 8 p.m., I was in the kitchen helping clean up when I heard a commotion from the living room. I heard what sounded like something hitting the floor hard, followed by Amelia's voice getting louder and more agitated. By the time I made it to the living room, Amelia was standing there with tears streaming down her face, holding the pieces of what had clearly been her new iPhone. "Luna destroyed my phone," she sobbed, turning to Dad with this heartbroken expression. She grabbed it out of my hands and threw it on the ground because she was jealous that I got the same model as her. I stood there completely stunned. I hadn't even been in the living room. I'd been in the kitchen the entire time, washing dishes and putting away leftovers. But before I could even open my mouth to defend myself, Dad's face went dark. "Luna, how could you do this?" he started, his voice already rising. "This is exactly the kind of behavior that your mother worried about. You've always been jealous of your sister, and now you're taking it out on her when she's trying to enjoy Christmas?" I tried to interrupt. "Dad, I wasn't even in the room." "Don't lie to me," he shouted, cutting me off. "Look at her. Look how upset she is. You think she would make this up? You think she would destroy her own phone just to blame you?" What followed was honestly one of the worst hours of my life. Dad launched into this tirade about how I'd always been resentful of the attention Amelia needed because of her mental health issues. He accused me of being cruel and vindictive, of taking advantage of Amelia's vulnerability, of being just like some unnamed relatives on my mother's side who he'd always thought were jealous and spiteful people. Every time I tried to speak, he'd talk over me. "I don't want to hear your excuses, Luna. I saw how you looked at that phone when we were opening presents. I saw the jealousy in your eyes." This was completely insane. I hadn't been jealous at all. I'd been grateful for the gift and had genuinely told both of them so. But there was no reasoning with him. Amelia stood there the whole time, occasionally adding fuel to the fire with comments like, "She's always been like this, Dad, and I don't know why she hates me so much." The worst part was that Dad kept talking about Mom, saying things like, "Your mother would be so disappointed in you right now," and this is exactly the kind of family drama your mother never wanted. Using mom's memory as a weapon was a new low, even for him. After about an hour of this, Dad finally delivered his ultimatum: I want you out of my house, Luna. I can't even look at you right now. Pack up your things and leave. It was 9:30 at night, December 25th, and the temperature outside was about 15 degrees. I'd driven over in just a sweater because I'd planned to stay warm inside all evening. But Dad wouldn't listen to any practical concerns. You should have thought about the consequences before you decided to hurt your sister, he said coldly. I grabbed my purse and keys, not even bothering to get my coat from the closet because I didn't want to prolong the confrontation. As I was leaving, I heard Amelia say to Dad, "Maybe Santa can bring me a new phone," in this sweet, innocent voice that made my stomach turn. The drive home was miserable. My car's heater takes forever to warm up, and I was shaking from both the cold and the adrenaline. I kept replaying the whole scene in my head, trying to figure out if there was something I could have said or done differently. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. When I got home, I was too wound up to sleep. I kept thinking about how confident Amelia had seemed, how quickly she'd started crying, how perfectly her story had aligned with Dad's existing narrative about me being jealous of her. Something about the whole thing felt rehearsed. That's when I remembered the security cameras. I logged into the system from my laptop and started reviewing the footage from that evening. I fast-forwarded through most of it. You can see all three of us having dinner, opening presents, everything looking normal and happy. Then around 8:10 p.m., you can see me leaving the living room to go help in the kitchen. The living room camera has a perfect view of the couch where Amelia had been sitting with her new phone. For about 2 minutes after I left, she's just sitting there normally, playing with the phone. Then she gets up and walks to the center of the room, directly in front of the camera. What happens next is honestly shocking, even though I was expecting it. Amelia looks directly at the camera. She obviously knows it's there, and then she raises the iPhone above her head and slams it down onto the hardwood floor as hard as she can. The phone bounces and she stomps on it twice, grinding her heel into the screen until it's completely shattered. But here's the part that really got to me. After she destroys the phone, she pulls out her old phone and starts texting someone. The camera angle is good enough that I can actually see her typing, and since I know her texting habits pretty well, I was able to make out most of what she wrote. Watch this, I'm going to manipulate him into giving me Pro Max. She sent that text, put her old phone away, and then immediately started the crying and theatrics that I walked into a few minutes later. I sat there staring at my laptop screen for probably an hour, watching the footage over and over again. The premeditation of it was what really got to me. This wasn't some impulsive act or a mental health episode, this was a calculated manipulation designed to get me in trouble and get her a better phone. I was furious, but I was also hurt. This wasn't just about a phone or even about Dad yelling at me. This was about the fact that my own sister was willing to completely destroy my relationship with our father just to get something she wanted. She had to know that Dad would react the way he did. She had to know he'd kick me out. She just didn't care. I didn't sleep that night. I kept going back and forth about what to do with the footage. Part of me wanted to call Dad immediately and show him what really happened. But another part of me was curious to see how far Amelia would take this lie. Christmas Day was miserable. I spent it alone in my apartment, fielding angry text messages from Dad about how disappointed he was in me and how I needed to make things right with Amelia. He also mentioned that they were going shopping the next day to replace the phone I broke. Sure enough, on December 26th, Dad posted on social media about taking Amelia to get a new phone after some Christmas drama. The photo showed them at the store, with Amelia holding a brand new iPhone 15 Pro Max, the most expensive model, which retails for about $1,200. She looked absolutely delighted. That's when I decided it was time to act. I spent some time on December 26 preparing everything carefully. I edited the security footage down to just the relevant parts, Amelia destroying the phone and sending the text message. I also pulled the metadata showing the exact timestamp, which clearly showed this happened while I was in the kitchen. I put together a short video that told the whole story without needing any explanation. This morning, December 27th, I sent the video to Dad via email with a simple subject line: Christmas Eve security footage, living room camera. I didn't include any message, no explanation, no commentary. I just sent the video and waited. My phone started ringing about 20 minutes later. It was Dad, and I'd never heard him sound like this before. His voice was shaking when he spoke. Luna, I need to apologize. I need to apologize for everything. He told me he'd watched the video 3 times, and each time it had made him feel sicker. He said he couldn't believe how completely he'd been manipulated, and how badly he'd treated me based on a complete lie. I said terrible things to you, he said, and I could hear that he was crying. I brought up your mother, I kicked you out into the cold, I didn't even let you defend yourself. I'm so sorry. He also told me what had happened when he confronted Amelia with the footage. Apparently, she first tried to deny it was her in the video, then claimed she didn't remember doing it because she was having a dissociative episode. When Dad pointed out the text message she'd sent, she broke down and admitted the whole thing. According to Dad, Amelia confessed that she'd been planning this for weeks. She'd seen advertisements for the Pro Max model and decided she wanted one instead of the regular iPhone 15. She knew Dad wouldn't just buy her a more expensive phone for no reason, so she came up with this plan to destroy the one he'd given her and blame me for it. She'd specifically chosen to blame me because she knew Dad would believe her over me, and she knew he'd feel guilty enough about punishing me that he'd overcompensate by buying her something more expensive. The most chilling part is that she'd apparently done similar things before, smaller manipulations that I'd never caught on to. Dad said she admitted to lying about me saying mean things about her, about me not inviting her to events that I'd actually never heard about me being cold and distant during family gatherings where I'd thought everything was fine. She's been poisoning our relationship for years, Dad said, and I let her do it because I thought I was protecting her. Dad told me he'd returned the Pro Max immediately and was requiring Amelia to use her old phone until she could pay for a replacement herself. He also said he was insisting she restart therapy and find a psychiatrist to review her medications, with the understanding that if she refused, she'd need to find somewhere else to live. I enabled this behavior, he said. I made excuses for her, I let her hurt you, and I'm not going to do it anymore. The conversation was emotional and difficult, but also healing in a way. Dad and I talked for over an hour, and he apologized repeatedly for not listening to me, for bringing up Mom in such a hurtful way, and for making assumptions about my character based on Amelia's lies. He also told me something that really stuck with me. Your mother always said that the worst thing we could do for Amelia would be to teach her that her mental illness was an excuse to hurt other people. I forgot that lesson, and I'm sorry. But here's where things get really interesting. About 2 hours after Dad and I got off the phone, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Rashid Kumar, someone I'd never heard of before. Turns out, he's the person Amelia had texted on Christmas Eve, her boyfriend that none of us knew about. Rashid had been dating Amelia for about 4 months, and according to him, she'd been bragging about how easy it was to manipulate our father. She'd apparently told Rashid all about her plan to frame me for breaking the phone, and she'd been sending him updates throughout the whole process. She showed me the new phone and told me exactly how she got it, Rashid said. She thought it was funny. She kept saying her family was stupid and easy to control. But here's the kicker, Rashid had been recording some of their conversations because he'd started to get uncomfortable with how manipulative Amelia was being, not just with our family but with him too. He said she'd been lying to him about things, manipulating situations to get money and gifts from him, and he'd started documenting it for his own protection. When he saw Dad's social media post about the Christmas drama and the new phone, he put 2 and 2 together and realized he had evidence of Amelia's premeditation. He said he'd been debating whether to reach out to our family, and when he heard from a mutual friend that Dad had discovered the truth, he decided to come forward. Rashid sent me several audio recordings of Amelia describing her manipulation tactics. In one of them, she's literally coaching him on how to lie to his own family about something. In another, she's laughing about how pathetic Dad is and how easy it is to make him feel guilty. The recordings are honestly hard to listen to. This isn't someone having a mental health crisis or struggling with emotional regulation, this is someone who has learned to weaponize other people's love and concern for her own benefit. I forwarded the recordings to Dad, and he called me back about an hour later, sounding completely defeated. I don't even know who she is, he said. The person in these recordings isn't the daughter I thought I was protecting. She's talking about us like we're marks in some kind of con game. Dad confronted Amelia again, this time with the recordings, and apparently she had a complete meltdown. She accused him of choosing Luna over her, threatened to hurt herself, and ultimately locked herself in her room. As of right now, Dad has given Amelia an ultimatum. She has 1 week to find somewhere else to live, and she needs to start intensive therapy immediately if she wants to maintain any relationship with our family. He's also insisting that she pay back the money he spent on the Pro Max, even though he returned the phone. I'm honestly not sure how I feel about all of this. On one hand, I'm vindicated and relieved that Dad finally sees what's been happening. The security footage was the smoking gun I needed to prove my innocence, and having Rashid come forward with additional evidence was beyond what I could have hoped for. But I'm also sad about the whole situation. Amelia is my sister, and despite everything she's done, I don't want her to be homeless or completely cut off from the family. Mental illness is real and serious, and I know she's struggled with genuine symptoms over the years. At the same time, I can't ignore the calculated nature of what she did. This wasn't an impulsive act during a mental health crisis, this was premeditated manipulation designed to hurt me and deceive our father. The text message and the recordings make it clear that she knew exactly what she was doing and that she found it amusing. Dad and I are planning to have dinner tomorrow night to continue processing everything that's happened. He's asked me to help him figure out how to support Amelia's mental health needs without enabling her manipulative behavior, which is a conversation I never thought we'd be having. I've also been thinking about whether to press charges. Technically, what Amelia did could be considered fraud. She destroyed property and lied to obtain money under false pretenses. The iPhone Pro Max cost Dad $1,200, which might make this a felony depending on our state's laws. But I'm not sure if involving the legal system would help anyone in this situation. The whole experience has been emotionally exhausting, but it's also been enlightening. I've realized that I've been walking on eggshells around Amelia for years, always giving her the benefit of the doubt and making excuses for behavior that I wouldn't tolerate from anyone else. I've also gained a new appreciation for the importance of documentation. If I hadn't installed those security cameras 6 months ago, I would never have been able to prove what really happened. Amelia would have gotten away with her manipulation, Dad would still believe I was capable of cruel and vindictive behavior, and our relationship would have been permanently damaged. Looking back, I think there were probably other incidents over the years where Amelia manipulated situations and I just never had the evidence to prove it. The recordings from Rashid suggest that this kind of behavior has been going on for a long time, and it makes me wonder how many other family conflicts were actually manufactured by her. I'm sharing this story partly because I needed to get it off my chest, but also because I think it illustrates something important about family dynamics and mental health. It's possible to be compassionate and supportive of someone's mental health struggles while still holding them accountable for their choices and actions. Mental illness doesn't give someone a free pass to hurt other people, and enabling manipulative behavior doesn't actually help the person who's struggling. It just teaches them that their problems can be solved through deception and emotional manipulation rather than through genuine treatment and personal growth. I hope Amelia gets the help she needs, but I also hope she faces real consequences for what she's done. Actions have consequences, regardless of the underlying reasons for those actions, and learning that lesson might actually be the most helpful thing that could happen to her right now. As for Dad and me, I think our relationship is going to be stronger than ever. This whole experience has forced us to have conversations about family dynamics, enabling behavior, and the importance of listening to each other that we probably should have had years ago. The security footage didn't just prove my innocence, it opened up a whole conversation about how our family has been functioning and how we want to move forward. Sometimes the truth is painful, but it's also liberating. I'll update this post if anything significant happens in the next few days. Right now, I'm just taking things one day at a time and trying to process everything that's happened. Thanks for reading, and thanks for letting me share this story. Sometimes you need to tell the internet about your family drama just to make sense of it all. Update: I'm adding this update because several people have asked about what happened with Amelia and whether Dad followed through on his ultimatum. It's been a week since my original post, and the situation has continued to develop in ways I didn't expect. First, regarding Amelia's living situation, Dad did follow through on his ultimatum, but not in the way I anticipated. Instead of kicking her out immediately, he worked with her therapist and a social worker to arrange for her to move into a supervised living facility that specializes in helping people with mental health conditions develop independent living skills. This wasn't Dad being soft, It was actually a more structured and accountability-focused solution than I had expected. Amelia will be living with other residents who are also working toward independence, and she'll have access to daily therapy, medication management, and life skills training. More importantly, she'll be required to participate in all of these services if she wants to stay in the program. The facility also has strict rules about manipulative behavior and requires residents to take responsibility for their actions as part of the treatment process. Dad toured the facility with Amelia's therapist and felt it was the best option for giving her the support she needs while also establishing clear boundaries. Amelia was not happy about this arrangement initially, but when Dad made it clear that the alternative was finding her own place to live with no financial support, she agreed to try the program. Second, regarding the money, Amelia has agreed to pay back the $1,200 for the Pro Max through a combination of her disability payments and a part-time job that the facility will help her find. Dad set up a payment plan that takes about 30% of her monthly income, which will take her roughly a year to pay off. He felt this was fair because it holds her accountable without being financially devastating. Third, and this was the biggest surprise, Rashid reached out to me again with more information. It turns out that after our initial conversation, he'd started thinking about other people who might have been affected by Amelia's manipulation. He did some digging and found 2 other guys she'd been dating simultaneously, both of whom had similar stories about being lied to and manipulated for money and gifts. One of them, Isaac Davis, had actually lent Amelia $800 for what she claimed was a medical emergency that turned out to be completely fabricated. The other, Mateo Garcia, had bought her expensive jewelry after she told him elaborate stories about our family being abusive and neglectful, stories that were apparently complete fiction. Rashid organized a group conversation between the 3 of them, and they discovered that Amelia had been telling each of them that he was her only boyfriend while simultaneously dating all 3. She'd also been using different versions of her mental health history to manipulate each of them in specific ways. The 3 of them have decided to pursue small claims court cases against Amelia to recover the money she took from them through false pretenses. They asked if I wanted to join their cases, but I decided against it. Dad returning the Pro Max felt like enough resolution for me, and I didn't want to get involved in legal proceedings if I could avoid it. Fourth, Dad and I have been having regular dinners and really working on rebuilding our relationship. He's been incredibly apologetic and has made a genuine effort to understand how his enabling behavior affected both me and Amelia over the years. We've also started family therapy together, which has been helpful for processing everything that happened and figuring out how to move forward. One thing that came out in therapy is that Dad's guilt over Mom's death made him feel like he had to make up for her absence by being extra lenient with Amelia. He thought that being strict or holding her accountable would be like abandoning her when she was already dealing with loss and mental illness. The therapist helped him understand that accountability and support aren't opposites, that holding someone accountable for their actions can actually be a form of love and support, especially when it helps them develop better coping skills and healthier relationships. Finally, I heard from Amelia directly for the first time since Christmas. She called me from the facility about 5 days ago, and the conversation was complicated. She started by apologizing, which I appreciated, but the apology felt somewhat scripted and incomplete. She acknowledged that she'd lied about the phone and that she'd manipulated Dad, but she kept framing it in terms of her mental illness rather than taking full responsibility for her choices. "I know what I did was wrong, but you have to understand that I wasn't thinking clearly," she said. "My borderline makes me do things that I wouldn't normally do." I told her that while I understood that mental illness can affect decision-making, the text message and the recordings from Rashid showed that she'd been thinking clearly enough to plan and execute a complex manipulation. I also pointed out that she'd been doing similar things for years, which suggested a pattern rather than isolated incidents during mental health crises. The conversation got tense when I brought up the recordings. Amelia claimed that she'd been performing for Rashid because she was afraid of him and wanted to seem tough and in control. She said the things she'd said about Dad and me weren't how she really felt. I asked her why she'd been dating 3 different guys at the same time and lying to all of them, and she got defensive. She said that her abandonment issues made it hard for her to trust that any one person would stay with her, so she kept backups in case her primary relationships failed. The conversation ended with Amelia asking if we could start over and have a normal sister relationship. I told her that I was open to rebuilding our relationship over time, but that it would require her to consistently demonstrate honest behavior and genuine accountability, not just apologies. I also told her that I wouldn't be able to trust her again quickly, and that she'd need to accept that there would be consequences for the damage she'd done to our family relationships. She didn't like hearing that, but she didn't argue with it either. Overall, I'm cautiously optimistic about how things are developing. Dad is following through on his commitments to change how he responds to Amelia's behavior, and the structured living facility seems like it might actually help her develop better coping skills. I'm not naive enough to think that Amelia is going to change overnight, or that our family relationships are going to be completely healed in a few months. But for the first time in years, I feel like we're addressing the real problems instead of just managing the symptoms. The security camera footage was the catalyst for all of this, but the real work of rebuilding trust and establishing healthy boundaries is going to take time. I'm committed to doing that work, but I'm also committed to protecting myself and not enabling manipulative behavior in the future. Thanks again to everyone who read the original post and offered support and advice. This community has been incredibly helpful during a difficult time, and I appreciate all the thoughtful comments and messages I received. Second update: it's been 3 weeks since my last update, and I feel like I need to share what's happened because the situation has taken some unexpected turns that really drive home how deep this manipulation went. First, something happened at my job that I initially thought was unrelated but turned out to be connected to everything with Amelia. I work at the Sheffield Maritime Aquarium, and about 2 weeks ago, my supervisor Rebecca Hassan called me into her office for what she described as a concerning conversation. Apparently, someone had called the aquarium's main number claiming to be my sister and saying that I'd been struggling with severe mental health issues, and had been making threats against family members. This anonymous caller suggested that the aquarium should keep an eye on me because I might become violent or unstable at work. Rebecca was professional about it, but she had to follow protocol and asked me directly about my mental state and whether there were any family issues that might affect my work performance. I was mortified, but I explained the whole situation with Amelia and the Christmas phone incident. I even showed Rebecca the security footage on my phone. Luna, in my 15 years of managing staff, I've never seen such a clear-cut case of someone trying to sabotage a family member's career, Rebecca said. This call was obviously designed to plant seeds of doubt about your reliability and mental stability. Rebecca documented everything and assured me that the call wouldn't affect my employment, but she advised me to be aware that Amelia might try other tactics to disrupt my life. She also suggested I consider getting a restraining order if the harassment continued. That same day, I got a call from my landlord, Carmen Mitchell, asking if I was planning to move out soon because she'd received a call from someone claiming to be my emergency contact saying I was going through a difficult time and might need to relocate for treatment. Again, this caller didn't identify themselves but implied that I might not be able to keep up with my rent payments. The pattern was becoming clear. Amelia was systematically trying to destabilize different areas of my life, my job, my housing, probably other things I hadn't discovered yet. When I told Dad about these incidents, he was horrified. "She's not just manipulating family situations anymore," he said. "She's actively trying to destroy your life." Dad called the supervised living facility where Amelia was staying, and they confirmed that she'd been making concerning phone calls during her free time. When confronted, Amelia initially denied making the calls, then claimed she was trying to get help for me because she was worried about my mental state after everything that happened. The facility director, a woman named Grace Petrov, told Dad that this kind of behavior indicated that Amelia wasn't engaging genuinely with her treatment program. "She's using the same manipulation tactics here that she apparently used at home," Grace explained. "She's been trying to pit residents against each other, spreading rumors about staff members, and now we discover she's harassing family members from outside the facility." As a result, Amelia's privileges were restricted. She lost access to the phone during unsupervised hours, and all her calls now have to be monitored. She was also moved to a more intensive therapy track that focuses specifically on manipulative behaviors and their consequences. But here's where things get really interesting. Remember Rashid, Isaac, and Mateo, the 3 guys Amelia had been manipulating? Well, their small claims court cases went to trial last week, and I decided to attend as a witness since I had some of the evidence from Rashid. What came out during the court proceedings was absolutely mind-blowing. Amelia's manipulation network was far more extensive than any of us had realized. The three guys had done more investigating after our initial conversations, and they discovered that Amelia was active on multiple dating apps under different names with different backstories. She had at least 7 different online personas, each with carefully crafted tragic histories designed to elicit sympathy and financial support. In one persona, she was Luna's twin sister who was being abused by her family and needed money to escape. In another, she was an orphan whose guardians were stealing her disability payments. In a third, she was a former foster child with no family support who was trying to get through college. Isaac had screenshots of conversations where Amelia was using details from my actual life, my job at the aquarium, my apartment complex, even photos she'd taken from my social media accounts, to make her fake stories more believable. She was literally using my identity as part of her cons. But the most shocking revelation came when Mateo's attorney presented phone records showing that Amelia had been in contact with over 30 different men over the past 8 months, with many of the conversations following the same pattern: initial romantic interest, followed by a crisis requiring financial help, followed by escalating demands for money and gifts. The court estimated that Amelia had fraudulently obtained over $15,000 from various victims over the past year alone. Some of the amounts were small, $50 here, $100 there, but others were substantial. One man had sent her $2,800 for what she claimed was emergency medical treatment for a condition that her medical records proved she didn't have. During her testimony, Amelia tried to use her mental health diagnoses as an excuse, claiming that her borderline personality disorder made her desperate for connection and that she didn't really understand that what she was doing was wrong. But the judge wasn't buying it. "Ms. Wilson," the judge said, "the evidence shows a sophisticated pattern of premeditated fraud spanning months and involving dozens of victims. This level of organization and planning is inconsistent with impulsive behavior driven by mental illness. This appears to be a calculated criminal enterprise." Amelia was ordered to pay restitution to all 3 plaintiffs, and the judge referred the case to the prosecutor's office for potential criminal charges. She could be facing multiple felony fraud counts if the DA decides to pursue the case. When I heard about the court proceedings, I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. Vindication because it proved that the Christmas phone incident was just the tip of the iceberg. Amelia had been engaging in this kind of behavior on a massive scale. But sadness because it meant that her problems were much deeper than I'd realized, and the chances of her genuinely reforming seemed increasingly slim. The day after the court hearing, I got an unexpected visitor at work. It was Chloe Garcia, Mateo's sister, who wanted to thank me for providing evidence that helped their case. But she also wanted to warn me about something else. "My brother isn't the only one in our family who is targeted," Chloe told me. Amelia somehow got my grandmother's phone number and called her claiming to be a social worker investigating elder abuse. She told my grandmother that Mateo was stealing money from elderly family members and that she should stop giving him financial support. This was a new level of viciousness. Amelia hadn't just manipulated her romantic targets for money, she'd actively tried to damage their relationships with their own families. Chloe's grandmother had believed the caller and had confronted Mateo, causing a family rift that took weeks to resolve. When we figured out it was the same person who had been scamming my brother, my grandmother felt terrible, Chloe said. But the damage was already done. My brother almost lost his relationship with our grandmother because of this woman's lies. I realized that Amelia's attempts to sabotage my job and housing were probably part of a broader pattern. She might have been doing similar things to all her victims, trying to isolate them from their support systems and destabilize their lives to make them more vulnerable to manipulation. That evening, I called Dad to fill him in on everything I'd learned. He was quiet for a long time after I finished talking. "Luna, I need to tell you something," he finally said. "I've been going through some old paperwork, trying to understand how I missed all of this, and I found some things that are troubling." Dad had been reviewing his bank statements and credit card bills from the past 2 years, looking for any signs of financial irregularities. What he found was a pattern of small charges and cash withdrawals that he couldn't account for. There were charges for things like gift cards, online purchases, cash advances, probably about $3,000 over 2 years that I can't explain, he said. "I always assumed I was just forgetting things or that they were legitimate expenses, but now I'm wondering if Amelia was somehow accessing my accounts." Dad had also found evidence that Amelia had been intercepting and opening some of his mail. He'd missed several important financial documents over the past year, and his accountant had commented that some tax paperwork seemed to be missing. "I think she was monitoring my finances to make sure I didn't discover her other activities," Dad said. "And I think she might have been stealing from me while she was manipulating these other people." This revelation led Dad to file a police report for identity theft and financial fraud. The police are now investigating whether Amelia used Dad's personal information to open credit accounts or make fraudulent purchases. Given everything else that's come to light, it seems increasingly likely that the Christmas phone incident was connected to a much larger pattern of criminal behavior. The police investigation has also uncovered something else disturbing. Amelia apparently created fake social media profiles for both Dad and me, which she used to support her various scam narratives. She had fake Facebook accounts in our names where she posted about being abusive and unsupportive, giving credibility to her stories about being mistreated by her family. Some of her victims had actually looked up these fake profiles and seen evidence of the family dysfunction she was claiming to experience. It was an incredibly sophisticated operation that involved creating an entire false digital history to support her cons. The detective handling the case, Ryan O'Connor, told Dad that this was one of the most elaborate family-based fraud schemes he'd encountered. "Most fraud cases involve strangers targeting strangers," he said. "It's unusual to see someone systematically exploiting both family relationships and romantic relationships on this scale." Detective O'Connor also warned us that Amelia might escalate her behavior now that her activities were being exposed. "People who engage in this level of manipulation often react badly when their control is threatened," he said. "You should be prepared for her to try more extreme tactics to regain control of the situation." Sure enough, 2 days after the police report was filed, I started getting messages from people claiming to be Amelia's friends who were concerned about how our family was treating her. These messages came through various social media platforms and even through professional networking sites. The messages all followed a similar pattern. They claimed that Amelia was being persecuted for her mental illness, that our family was abandoning her in her time of need, and that I was vindictive and cruel for involving the legal system. Some of the messages included threats about exposing my allegedly abusive behavior toward my sister. I forwarded all of these messages to Detective O'Connor, who confirmed that they were likely coming from Amelia herself using fake accounts. "She's trying to create the impression that she has a support network that believes her version of events," he explained. "It's a common tactic among manipulative individuals who are losing control of their narrative." The facility where Amelia is staying has also reported increased behavioral problems. According to Grace Petrov, Amelia has been trying to convince other residents that she's being framed by her family and that the criminal charges are part of a conspiracy to silence her. "She's not taking responsibility for her actions," Grace told Dad during a recent phone call. "Instead, she's doubling down on the victim narrative and trying to recruit allies who will support her version of events. This suggests that she's not genuinely engaged with the therapeutic process." As a result, the facility is considering transferring Amelia to a more secure program that specializes in treating individuals with antisocial behaviors. This would mean less freedom and more intensive supervision, but it might be necessary if she continues to engage in manipulative behavior. Meanwhile, the prosecutor's office has decided to move forward with criminal charges. Amelia is facing multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and computer crimes related to her fake social media profiles and online scams. If convicted on all counts, she could be looking at several years in prison. Dad and I have mixed feelings about the criminal charges. On one hand, we want Amelia to face consequences for her actions and get the intensive treatment she clearly needs. On the other hand, the prospect of her going to prison is frightening, especially given her mental health issues. "I keep wondering if there was something I could have done differently," Dad said during our last conversation. "Maybe if I'd been stricter earlier, or if I'd insisted on better treatment for her mental health issues, none of this would have happened." I told him what our family therapist had said, that Amelia's choices were her own, regardless of how our family responded to her mental illness. "You can't love someone out of antisocial behavior," the therapist had explained. "And enabling someone doesn't prevent them from making bad choices, it just shields them from the consequences that might motivate them to change." Looking back on everything that's happened, I'm struck by how the security camera footage was just the beginning. What started as evidence of one lie on Christmas Eve turned into the unraveling of an elaborate criminal enterprise that had been operating for years. I'm also amazed by how many people Amelia hurt in pursuit of money and control. It wasn't just our family that suffered, she damaged relationships, stole money, and caused emotional trauma for dozens of people who trusted her. The Christmas phone incident now seems almost quaint compared to everything else we've discovered. But in a way, it was the perfect microcosm of her behavior: the calculated destruction, the immediate pivot to victimhood, the manipulation of family loyalty, and the complete disregard for the consequences of her actions on other people. I'm sharing this extended update because I think it illustrates something important about manipulation and abuse. Sometimes what looks like a single incident is actually part of a much larger pattern. And sometimes the courage to document and expose one lie can lead to the discovery of a whole network of deception. The security cameras didn't just prove that I didn't break Amelia's phone, they started a chain of events that exposed years of criminal behavior and ultimately protected dozens of other potential victims. That's something I never could have anticipated when I first installed them to prevent package theft. As for what happens next, we're all just taking things one day at a time. The legal proceedings will probably take months to resolve, and Amelia's treatment is likely to be a long-term process regardless of whether she ends up in prison or in a more intensive therapeutic program. Dad and I are continuing our family therapy and working on rebuilding trust and communication. Our relationship is stronger now than it's been in years, partly because we're finally addressing problems that had been festering under the surface for a long time. I've also learned to trust my instincts more and to document things when something feels off. The security footage taught me the value of having objective evidence, and I'm applying that lesson to other areas of my life. Most importantly, I've learned that protecting yourself from manipulation isn't selfish or cruel, it's necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their destructive behavior and let them face the natural consequences of their choices. Amelia may never change, but at least now she won't be able to hurt as many people while she's making that choice.